It was a quiet afternoon when the sun hung lazily over the horizon, and the distant hum of motorcycles echoed faintly through the small town of Red River. The streets were nearly empty, save for the gentle clinking of wind chimes and the occasional bark of a dog. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, where gossip traveled faster than the wind, and where trouble rarely dared to show its face. But that calm was about to be shattered in a way no one could have imagined. Down the main road, a small girl no older than 7 came running, her shoes slapping the pavement, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her tiny voice cracked through the stillness like a siren. "They're beating my mama. Please, someone help." She stumbled and fell, scraping her knees, but she didn't stop. She kept running, straight toward a group of men sitting outside a roadside bar. Their bikes were lined up like iron beasts, glinting under the sunlight, each one marked with the unmistakable insignia of the Hells Angels. Leather jackets, tattoos, heavy boots, and a reputation that made even grown men think twice before crossing their path. To the people of Red River, the Angels were trouble incarnate. They were outsiders, rough, loud, and unpredictable. Most folks crossed the street when they saw them coming. But to this little girl, fear wasn't an option. Desperation had taken its place. She skidded to a stop in front of them, gasping for breath, her voice trembling. "Please, you have to help. My mama's being hurt." For a moment, no one moved. The leader of the group, a tall man with a beard streaked with gray and eyes as cold as steel, took a slow drag from his cigarette. The others glanced at him, waiting for his cue. No one expected what would happen next. He flicked his cigarette to the ground, stood up, and said just 2 words. "Show us." Without hesitation, the girl grabbed his hand and led the way. The rumble of engines soon filled the air as a dozen motorcycles roared to life. The sound tore through the town, turning heads and rattling windows. To anyone watching, it was an intimidating sight, a thunderous army of leather and chrome following a crying little girl down the road. They stopped at a rundown house at the edge of town. The front door was half open, and from inside came the unmistakable sounds of shouting and crashing. The leader motioned for the others to stay quiet. He stepped off his bike and walked slowly toward the door, his boots crunching the gravel beneath him. Inside, a man's voice barked in rage, followed by the sobs of a woman. The biker didn't knock. He kicked the door open with one swift motion. The scene inside was chaos, a man towering over a woman, his arm raised, a beer bottle in hand. The woman cowered on the floor, her face bruised, her lip bleeding. The man turned at the sound of the door, his eyes wide with anger. "Who the hell are you?" he shouted. The biker didn't answer. He stepped forward, calm but deadly. "You must be the one who likes hitting women," he said quietly. The man scoffed, taking a step forward. "Mind your business, old man. This is between me and my wife." The biker's expression didn't change. Not anymore. Before the abuser could react, the biker grabbed him by the collar, lifted him off his feet, and slammed him against the wall. The man tried to fight back, but it was useless. Years of drinking and cruelty had made him weak. The biker pinned him effortlessly, his face inches away. "If I ever hear you laid a hand on her again," he growled, "you'll pray for mercy and you won't get it." The room fell silent except for the ragged breathing of the woman on the floor. The man tried to mumble something, but the biker cut him off with a hard shove that sent him crashing to the ground. The leader looked down at him one last time. "You've got 2 choices," he said. "Leave this house and never come back, or stay and deal with us." The man scrambled to his feet, muttering curses under his breath. But when he saw the line of Hell's Angels standing outside the door, arms crossed staring him down, the color drained from his face. He grabbed his car keys and bolted out the back door without another word. For a few seconds, there was nothing but silence. The little girl stood in the doorway, clutching a small stuffed bear, her wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. The biker crouched down to her level. His rough voice softened. "It's okay now, sweetheart. He's gone." Her lip trembled, but she nodded. "Thank you, mister." He gave her a small smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You did the right thing coming to us." The woman, still trembling, tried to stand. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to," he said. "Just take care of your little girl." Outside, the other bikers waited silently. One of them took off his leather vest and draped it over the woman's shoulders. "You're safe now," he told her gently. As the Angels prepared to leave, the leader turned to the girl again. You ever need help, you find us, okay?" She nodded shyly. "Okay." They roared away into the distance, engines echoing like thunder, leaving behind a shaken but safe family, and a story that would soon become legend in Red River. Word of what happened spread quickly. By evening, everyone in town had heard about the Hells Angels who saved a woman and her daughter from an abusive man. Some people were shocked. Others refused to believe it. To them, bikers were criminals, dangerous men who lived outside the law. But that day, those men had done what no one else had the courage to do. A few days later, the sheriff visited the biker leader, who was sitting at the same bar where it all began. "You know," the sheriff said, "vigilante justice isn't exactly legal." The biker smirked. "Neither is beating your wife." The sheriff didn't argue. He just nodded, adjusted his hat, and walked out. Maybe, deep down, he was grateful someone had stepped in when the system had failed. Time passed, and the story took on a life of its own. Some said the biker who led the charge was a former soldier, a man who'd seen too much violence in his life and had no tolerance for bullies. Others claimed he'd once had a sister who suffered the same fate, and he'd sworn never to let it happen to anyone else. The truth, though, remained with those who were there, and they never told. For the woman and her daughter, life slowly began to heal. The bruises faded, but the memory of that day never did. The little girl would often look out her window when she heard motorcycles passing through town, wondering if one of them was the man who had helped her. She grew up believing that heroes didn't always wear badges or capes. Sometimes they wore leather jackets and rode Harley Davidsons. Years later, she would tell that story to her own children, beginning every time with the same line, "When I was a little girl, I met the bravest men I ever knew." In the years that followed, the Hells Angels would pass through Red River a few more times. Each time they'd stop at that same bar, order a round of beers, and quietly leave a stack of bills under the counter with a note that said, "For the lady and her kid." They never stayed long. They never spoke of it again. But the people in town began to see them differently. The old stereotypes faded a little. They weren't just bikers anymore. They were the men who had stood up when no one else would. And though the Hells Angels' reputation across the world would always be complicated, feared by some, misunderstood by many, the story of that day reminded people that humanity can be found in the unlikeliest of places. One summer evening, nearly a decade later, a young woman walked into that same bar. She was confident now, with a kind smile and eyes that still carried a trace of the past. The bartender recognized her immediately. "You're her, aren't you?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm the little girl from that day." She placed a small envelope on the counter. Inside was a letter and an old photo of her and her mother, both smiling. The letter was simple. "To the men who saved us, you changed our lives. We'll never forget." The bartender smiled. "They'll be happy to know that." That night, when the bikers rolled in again, the bartender handed the envelope to their leader. He opened it quietly, read the letter, and stared at the photo for a long moment. Then he tucked it carefully into his jacket pocket. No words were exchanged. None were needed. When they rode off again, the sound of their engines echoed not as noise but as a promise, a reminder that kindness can come from anywhere, even from those the world chooses to fear. That day in Red River didn't just change one family's life. It changed the way an entire town saw the world. It proved that appearances can lie and that sometimes the people we expect the least from are capable of the greatest good, because heroism isn't about who you are or where you come from. It's about what you do when someone cries for help. And for one terrified little girl and her mother, salvation came not from the law, not from the neighbors, but from a group of men on roaring motorcycles who carried rough hands, wild hearts, and an unexpected sense of justice. To this day, the story is told in whispers and wide-eyed retellings. Some details have blurred with time, some names forgotten. But one truth remains clear. When the girl cried for help, the Hells Angels answered, and what they did left the whole town speechless.